The Pink Pulpits Podcast, the gospel according to her. The Pink Pulpits Podcast explores the living, learning, and leading of women in the 21st century. How does the modern woman handle the world the gospel way? This podcast is for women in ministry, women surrounded by ministry, and so many more. Join us weekly on Saturdays at 6 p.m. for the Pink Pulpits Podcast, the gospel according to her.
Hey, how are you guys doing? This is your next episode of the Pink Pulpit Podcast, and I want to welcome you. I'm your host, Lady Nicole Green, and I am excited about the conversation we're going to have today. You all know that the Pink Pulpit Podcast is the gospel according to her, and this is a platform of life's gospel for women, by women. And no matter where you are in ministry, whether you're in the pulpit of the church or the pulpit of the marketplace, this is the podcast where you hear from real women in real types of ministry and real stories that truly do matter. And I do believe that we're taking a journey, that we are walking the walk and talking the talk along each one of our pulpits, that we are going after this thing called life in a brand new way. Today, I want to talk about changing your destiny. Changing your destiny. I'm going to still be talking about the daughters of Zelophehad, but we're going to talk about it from a different perspective today, and about them having the audacity to ask. That when you have the audacity to go after something that you know belongs to you, that you really can change your destiny. Is there anyone out there that you know you want your destiny changed? That you have either started a business, or you are in several years of business, or you have gotten married, or you desire to be married, and where you are is not where you really are destined to be? That you know there is a different plan, a different purpose for your life, and you're trying to figure out how to get there, to get what belongs to you. So remember last week we talked about the daughters of Zelophehad, and they considered their circumstances. They challenged their circumstances, and when they did that, they watched God change their destiny. This wasn't a time where women were not able to get property or to get what belonged to their father in the event of their father's death. And these women shifted history and were able to claim a piece of the promised land. In Joshua 17, the women showed up once again, but this time it wasn't to ask for their inheritance, it was to get what was promised to them. Remember, we talked about the power of showing up, and that when you show up, things can happen and things can change. Here they are, they've arrived to the promised land, and they've come to get what belongs to them. And one of the biggest challenges for Christians is to ask for our desires, to allow God to fulfill them. But the first thing we must do is have the audacity to ask. He promises that if we delight ourselves in him, that he will give us the desires of our heart, right? That's in Psalms 37:4. And too often we settle for tradition or the status quo. We allow life to happen to us. We allow just whatever has been happening to everybody else and what everybody else is doing to be what we determine we can or cannot have. We believe things are a certain way and nothing can be done to change them. But what if what if you made a decision to be the one to cause something to change? What if you were the one that had the voice that could really make a difference? Could you imagine living in that kind of world? Well, guess what? I want you to know that you live in that kind of world. Maybe it's time for you to imagine your voice making a difference, to not only show up, but also speak up like the daughters of of Zelophehad. I love this because I really do believe they were game changers. They changed the game, that after this moment, every woman, every daughter was able to get what belonged to them. Had these daughters not fought for their rights to receive property, no other woman would have been able to receive land. But because of their courage, their voice was heard, and it changed the trajectory for women in that day and allowed other women that followed behind them to possess the promises of God, to get what in an ordinary situation they could not receive. And I want to know, am I talking to someone today that you've kind of made up your mind that you want something, but you figured that the status quo or statistics or the fact that no one's ever done it before or whatever the case may be has you kind of on that edge where you're kind of backing up and a little bit in fear and not really making the decision to do it, to go after it. I want you to know that you've got to distinguish yourself beyond the norm, beyond regular people. And you've got to go after, it. The story that I'm talking about is in Joshua 17:3-5. The New Living Translation says it this way. Now Zelophehad, son of Hefer, the son of Gilead, the son of Micah, the son of Manasseh, had no sons, but only daughters, whose names were Maliah, Noah, Hoglah, Michlah, Tirzah. And they went to Eleazar, the priest, Joshua, son of Nun, and the leaders said, the Lord commanded Moses to give us an inheritance among our relatives. So Joshua gave them an inheritance along with the brothers of their father, according to the Lord's command. What had never been done before was being done now. It had become a reality. And I'm talking to someone today, I'm talking to you all, that you've kind of stood back and it's kind of just gone along to get along, and you're not pushing past or you're not pressing the envelope. The sisters' preparedness and their unity in approaching the leaders caused Moses to establish God-directed guidelines that blessed women for generations. And that's what I really want to talk about today, is you changing the trajectory of where you are to where you ultimately need to be. Is that you've got to understand that your change is not just about you, but it is setting a tone for women everywhere. That is changing the status quo, it's changing the stage, it's changing what others think is possible for them, because you have the audacity to ask, and it changes your destiny and then changes the destiny of others. Imagine if they had never taken the bold step to go before the elders uninvited and unannounced, and it was something that no one would even have dared to do. But because these women came together on one accord, and that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you got to partner up with people. Sometimes you got to move the needle by looking around and saying, who can go with me? Who can I bring on my team that we can do this thing together and make that step forward? It was not even something that women even asked for, to ask for property that belongs to their father, especially during that time. And it would have been, people would have said no. They would have said, God would have said no, because it just wasn't done. They would have had the priest, and Moses would have said no. But to God, if you dare to ask, he will change your destiny. If you dare to go after it, he will change your destiny. God can and will do anything. And it will always be greater than what you can imagine or what you could even think, if you will dare to change your destiny. You got to ask. You got to go after it. When I started out trying to do television, and as you know, me and my husband both, we pastor a church in Indianapolis, Indiana. And a lot of people were trying to say, how will you be able to do television and you live in Indianapolis, your church is in Indianapolis, and you're trying to do television in Hollywood, you're trying to do movies, you're trying to do film, you're trying to do television, reality shows. And I said, well, God told me to do it. And people are like, it's never been done. You can't live in one place and your husband live in another. You can't try to live in two states. You have a church, you have a full-time job. How can you do it? And people tried to smush me down to what they believed and what they thought was
Enjoying the
possible,
Pink
what they
Pulpits
thought was
podcast?
possible.
Be sure to
And
like and follow us on
my husband sat
Spotify
down and
at
said,
Pink Pulpits
if God
Podcast.
said it,
Subscribe to our
let's go
YouTube
after it.
at
Let's
Pink
change
Pulpits
our destiny.
Podcast.
Let's change our
Like and
trajectory.
save
Let's
our
change
website
the
at
status quo. Let's
pinkpulpits.org
change what it
and
looks like
get
for
our
everybody
amazing
else.
No More Silly
And
Women
we dare
app
to
to
do
get
it.
all
Now, what
updates on the
may
Pink
make sense
Pulpits
to
Podcast.
anybody
And
else
remember, it's the
makes
gospel
sense to
according
us
to her.
because we knew we had a God said. We knew that if we just had the audacity to do it, to change our destiny, to do it and do it regardless of what it looked like to anybody else, regardless to what anybody else was saying and who else had never done it, we were going to see what we were trying to go after and believe for. And let me say this, everybody. People try to talk us out of it. People say your marriage is not going, it will suffer, it will be hard. You may even end up in a place where you're divorced. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Everyone tried their best. And most people did it out of love to talk us out of going after it. And I'm talking to you guys today on this podcast because I think a lot of us are trapped and stagnant and staying in spaces because we're afraid of what other people think. We're afraid because the statistics on paper don't bear out. We've allowed the world to tell us what we can and can't do versus us going after it and changing our destiny, changing the status quo. And you've got to decide that I want to defy the odds, that I'm going to defeat fear. I am going to do it. And even if the first time doesn't work, you know what you can do? Try again. That's what you got to do. You got to determine that I'm going to get it. I'm going to reach it. I'm going to leap, and I'm gonna keep leaping until I get it. And that's what happened for me when I went after it. It was a huge feat, but I made it. I did it, and I am so glad I did. And I want to invite you all into this journey. I want to invite you to making a decision. You know what? I'm going to go after it. I don't care if no one else has ever done it before. I'll be the first one. Think about how many times we talk about the first one to do this or the first one to do that or the first one that made that happen. They get the big accolades. They get the big flowers. They get the big celebration because they were the ones that dared to do it. What will you dare to do today? How do you change your destiny? How do you change the trajectory of where you are? How do you go further than anyone in your family has ever gone? How do you go and get that thing that you know you want to do, but you've been tied up and tangled up in fear and you haven't done it? Normally, we have a tendency of not doing things. And when I made a decision to do it, I learned a valuable lesson throughout the entire journey of doing Hollywood. And along the journey, I'm sure I'll be able to talk more about everything that happened. But what I want you all to know is my husband and I did it. And we're 25 years strong. And we're more in love today than we've ever been. He's my agreement partner. He's my best friend. But it's because I had someone that dared with me. And I do think that you can find partners and then find someone that will dare to do it with you. And even if you know you're supposed to do this particular piece alone, let them dare to do it with you as an encourager or as someone that's celebrating you or someone that you can help walk out the plan with. That, remember I talked the power of showing up, but you also have to show up prepared. You got to show up when you come ready to change the trajectory, ready to ask. You've got to decide to make sure that you have dotted every I, crossed every T, and often don't allow unpreparedness to be the reason why it didn't work. I don't know about you, but where do you need to show up? Where do you need to have the audacity to change the trajectory of where you are? Where do you sense God wants you to go, and what does he want you to do? Where have you been? What have you been too afraid to try? What have you not asked for that you know you need to ask for? I'm asking you those questions because I want you to ask yourself those questions. What is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Philippians 4:6 says it this way: be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the Bible says in James 4:2, you do not have because you have not asked. Asking is a major component of changing the trajectory of where you are. Don't suffer in silence. Don't sit there with your mouth closed. My mother used to say it this way: a closed mouth does not get fed. So what if you've never seen it before? So what if you've never done it before? So what if no one else on the planet has done it before? You've got to know this is God's playground. This is the place where he makes the impossible possible. This is where he does his best work. This is where he shows up the greatest. This is where he turns the table. When you have the audacity to go after it, because he said, if you will just believe, if you will just ask, if you will say, this is not it, I know it's got to be more. I want the more. I maybe should have named the podcast that today, right? I want the more. I mean, don't accept that it never has been done as the final answer. Don't accept you're not capable. Don't accept that you're too old. Don't accept that you're too young. Don't accept you don't have enough money. Don't accept you don't have enough education. Don't accept you're not qualified. Don't accept. Today, just don't accept it. Don't accept it from you. Don't accept it from anybody else. Don't accept it. You've got to hold yourself to a different level. You got to say to yourself, self, what we doing? You've got to tell yourself, there's more. There's so much more. And is there anybody that's listening to the podcast that said, I want the more. I want the full till it overflows. I want my cup running over. I want to change the trajectory of my destiny. I want everything I'm destined for. I want it all. The more. And watch this. I want you to have the power to show up. I want you to have the audacity to change the trajectory of your destiny. And I want you to ask for it. Unapologetic, unwavered, unhindered, a little unhinged, like aggressive. I mean, I want you to just don't even take no for an answer. I don't care who says no. All you need is one yes. You don't need everybody. You need one. You don't even need a whole yes. You can get a yee. If you get a yee, you can go. Go with a yee. Do it, and do it knowing that God is leading you, challenging you, And he wants to change your life. He wants you to have more. He said, I will do exceeding abundantly above all you can ask or think. So today, go after the more. Have the audacity to change your destiny. Look at your destiny. I don't care how small it may be, how bad it may look, or even how great it may be. God still has more. Ask for it. Go after it. And just have the audacity. Let's change some things. Let's let our pulpits change everything. And then you know what? We'll be changing it for the woman behind us, and the woman behind her, and the woman behind her. I'm so glad I'm taking this journey with you. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Pink Pulpit Podcast. This is the gospel according to her. And this is the platform of life's gospel. And women, we're changing the game. Just like the daughters of Zelophehad. They changed the game. And I promise you, if you will dare to change the game, you'll change your destiny forever. I'll see you next time. This is real women doing real ministry with real stories that matter. Join me next week in the pulpit for another discussion. I can't wait to see what you're doing in your pulpit.
Tune in next week for the Pink Pulpits Podcast, the gospel according to her. Be sure to like, follow, share, and subscribe to this amazing weekly podcast with your host, Lady Nicole Green. That's right, the Pink Pulpits Podcast, the gospel according to her.